The Awakening, the Revised Edition by Lilac Moon. Chapter 13. Identity Lost, Identity Found. Anakin stood next to the Chancellor in his office. It had been a frustrating 2 months, with the only bright spot being that he had been able to spend a lot of time with his beautiful wife. But despite the constant debate in the Senate pleading to the Chancellor to set aside his emergency powers, in which he steadfastly refused to do so, they were close to dealing with General Grievous. Obi-Wan had spent the last 2 months chasing after the droid general, who had continued to elude them. But finally, they had located his latest location, and he was unaware of the Jedi's knowledge of his current hideout. Obi-Wan had returned to Coruscant briefly, and would soon again leave, with his troops in order to ambush Grievous on Utapau. He was confident that once Obi-Wan engaged the general, he would finally be destroyed, and the war would come to an end. That's why Anakin planned to tell Obi-Wan about his marriage to Padme, and his plan to tell the Council, regardless of the likelihood that he would be expelled. For, despite the turmoil in the galaxy around him, Anakin and Padme's love had grown and flourished, even stronger than it had in the last 2 months, since they had finally been able to live together on a daily basis. And now, it was becoming almost painful to be separated from each other for more than the space of a day. Something truly amazing and wonderful had happened between them. An eternal bond had formed and entwined their hearts forever. Any time apart, or extended separation, was no longer an option for them. Padme and their unborn children were his life, and vice versa with her. They would not and could not give up their dreams of being together and raising their family. So, if the Jedi chose to expel him for it, then he was okay with it. They were excited about their growing family, and Padme planned to go to Naboo soon to begin fixing up the nursery in Varakino, and Anakin planned to leave Coruscant behind with her and build a new life with her. That's why Palpatine's refusal to recognize that the war was indeed close to an end frustrated them so. And when Padme entered the Chancellor's office, dressed in full senatorial garb, he knew she was the brave one from her delegation that would present yet another petition to the Chancellor. He agreed with her proposal. He agreed with her position and admired her courage to stand up for what was right. He always had. But he was also constantly fearing for her life, which was why he couldn't wait to take her away from this dangerous life and settle into raising their children. Her bulky senatorial gown hid her swelling belly, and, as it always did on her daily basis, her beauty took his breath away. "Senator Amidala, how can I help you this afternoon?" Palpatine asked kindly, though he knew why she was here. She was quite the annoyance, but he would soon be rid of her, as well as all his enemies. "I am here on behalf of the delegation of 2,000 with a signed petition from nearly everyone in the committee. The petition asks that you set aside your emergency powers and allow democracy to be restored," Padme stated. Palpatine examined the petition. "Well, I must say this is impressive. Such a thing as this could have been no easy undertaking. You must have worked tirelessly," Palpatine responded, and she had. Anakin had watched her labour over it for weeks. "But I am afraid your hard work was in vain. We are still very much at war, Senator, and I cannot yet, in good conscience, lay aside my emergency powers," Palpatine lamented. "But Chancellor, the Jedi Council has informed the Senate that Grievous will soon be dealt with," Padme argued. "Yes, Jedi Skywalker reported this to me this morning, but I am afraid the Jedi must have made this claim for many months, and yet Grievous is still at large," Palpatine stated. Padme fumed. "I'm sorry, my dear, but until I have proof that Grievous is dead, and no longer leads the droid army, the war will continue," Palpatine stated. Padme swallowed her fury and maintained her professional front. "Very well, Chancellor. I won't take up any more of your time. Good day," Padme replied.
You know, I always enjoy seeing you, Senator.
Palpatine lied. Padme's gaze found Anakin's for a split second before she turned and exited.
Quite the woman, isn't she?
Palpatine asked.
Senator Amidala is very passionate in her beliefs. A quality to be admired.
Anakin responded stoically, locking down his feelings tight.
Yes. I'm afraid I have not yet completed my report for the Council yet. Will you be available this evening to come by the Opera House and retrieve it?
Palpatine questioned. Anakin silently cursed the old politician. He didn't like his evenings with Padme being interrupted. But he had no choice.
Of course, Your Excellency. I will take my leave now, and see you then.
Anakin responded as he left. Palpatine smirked evilly. Everything was falling into place. Rex removed his helmet as he hopped down from his fighter. They would only be on Coruscant one night, and then they would be leaving for the Upatu system. They had finally cornered Grievous without him getting wind of it, and they would be staging an ambush. Once Grievous was dead, the Separatist leaders would be forced to either surrender or disband into hiding. Therefore, the war would end. Rex had never really thought about what his purpose would be once the war had ended. He was trained, and he used the word trained instead of programmed, to live the life of the perfect soldier. But what did a soldier do when there was no war to fight? He had never had these questions before, at least not until he became good friends with Anakin Skywalker, the most unorthodox Jedi he had ever met. And Anakin was nothing like the typical Jedi general, and Rex considered that a benefit. It wasn't that he didn't like the other Jedi he had served under. No, he was mostly indifferent to them. They were his commanders, nothing more. But Anakin was a friend, and treated him as such. At first, he didn't exactly know what to feel about that. Making friends was something that he had never been taught how to do. Though he had friend-like relationships with his brothers, but he considered that to be totally different. No. Anakin Skywalker was different, and he had often referred to him as the anti-Jedi, only to himself, of course. Anakin cared. Anakin was truly saddened when one of them died. To Anakin, they were people, not clones, or worse, drones. They had been brought up to believe that there was only one purpose as soldiers, nothing more and nothing less. They had been brought up to believe that their only purpose was as soldiers, nothing more and nothing less. And nothing less. And for a very long time, Rex was okay with that. He would live the life of a soldier, and likely die in battle. It was not until he had run into one of his own brothers that had deserted their cause, that he had begun to question everything about his life. At first, he had been livid with his brother for his disgrace. But then, he had looked at what he had compared to himself. But then, he had looked at the beautiful wife. But then he looked at what he had compared to himself. He had a beautiful wife, and 2 children. And what did Rex have? Loyalty to a government that mostly thought of them as just mindless soldiers to carry out whatever bidding they deemed necessary. He used to think of such thoughts as treasonous, but he had begun to question everything. And Rex had made a decision. He would be loyal to the person he had become. He would be loyal to the person he had become, and do what he believed was right, even if it someday meant going against his programming. And it was all thanks to the friendship he shared with Anakin Skywalker. Little did Rex know, he would soon be faced with this very dilemma, and the question was, would he have the courage to do what he believed was right, even if it meant defying everything he had been programmed to do? Anakin arrived home soon after Padme and she hurried over. Anakin arrived home soon after Padme, and she hurried to greet him with a come on. Anakin arrived home soon after Padme, and she hurried out to greet him with a welcoming hug. She had changed out of her uncomfortable, bulky gown and into a more casual green dress, with plum-coloured trimming and a flattering waist sash in the same colour that rested above her baby bump, which was now visible in this dress. As she pulled back from their warm embrace, he lowered his lips to hers, and her heart skipped a beat, just as it always did when he kissed her. She slid her arms around his neck as their lips moved over each other in an array of passionate kisses. "Wow, what a welcome," she said as their lips parted. He smiled and rested his hand on her belly.
"I'm sorry about what happened in Palpatine's office. I hate the way he just brushes you off,"
Anakin said. She shrugged. "I'm used to it. He's been brushing me off for years. It doesn't really bother me anymore. What bothers me is the fact that he does everything he can to keep this war from ending," Padme replied. He nodded.
"I know," he agreed,
as a bright smile of wonder washed over his face as he felt one of the twins kick. She smiled back. "They know their daddy is here," Padme said. He kissed her tenderly.
"Is Ahsoka home yet?" he asked.
Padme shook her head. "No, she must still be at the temple," she replied as they sat on the sofa. Padme smiled as she picked up a datapad. "I got a new set of baby names today," she mentioned.
"Good, I hope they were better than the last batch."
"Come on, they weren't that bad," Padme said.
"Who would name their son Asteroid?"
"Who would name their son and daughter Asteroid and Nova?" he said, thinking of the two so-called names were ridiculous. Thinking that the so-called names were ridiculous, she giggled. "Okay, some of them were pretty bad, but I promise these are better, because they are solely a selection of Nabooan names," Padme replied.
"Good,"
he said as they settled back, and she started scrolling through the names. She stopped on one, and he noticed a sudden, thoughtful look on her face.
"What is it, Angel?"
he asked. "Oh, it's just this name," she replied. He looked at the one she was looking at.
"Aiden,"
he read, watching her reaction.
"It's a strong name,"
he mentioned. "When I found out I was pregnant, the first time, almost 3 years ago, I remember looking at names, just to start getting an idea of the endless possibilities. I just had this gut feeling that it was a boy. And when I came across this name, it just reminded me of you. And I thought it was perfect," she explained.
"Is that what you want to name our son?"
he asked, but she shook her head. "No, Aiden didn't make it. To me, the little one we lost will always be Aiden," she replied.
"You never mentioned that you named him,"
Anakin said. "I know. It was just really hard to talk about it right after it happened. This is the first time I let myself think about it," Padme replied. Anakin wrapped his arms around her and kissed her softly.
"Aiden will always be in our hearts,"
Anakin told her, and she smiled.
"Now let's get these two a pair of beautiful names too,"
he added, and she nodded as they began scrolling through names again.
"My master,"
Vader said as his hologram appeared before Sidious, and he bowed. The Sith Master smirked.
"The time for our conquest draws near, my young apprentice. I have foreseen that Obi-Wan Kenobi will eliminate General Grievous for us very soon. Then our time to act will come. We shall rise and kill the Jedi. I will send for you very soon. Then our time to act will come, and we shall rise. See that you are ready and prepared, Lord Vader."
Sidious hissed.
"I am ready, my master. I will destroy every last Jedi, starting with my father."
Vader responded.
"Yes. Let your anger and hate drive you. Use your rage to strike down all in our path,"
Sidious instructed.
"Yes, my master,"
Vader responded as the transmission went blank. Sidious chuckled evilly. Vader would be the perfect apprentice. He knew nothing but anger and hatred, and it would make him a lethal opponent, for he would show no hesitation in striking down anyone in his path. No one would stand in the way of his new empire. Anyway, Padme and Anakin are kissing. Anakin groaned in annoyance and tossed the device to the carpet. As it resumed its beeping. Should you get that? She asked breathlessly.
Do you want me to stop doing this? He asked.
No, don't stop, she pleaded. Who is it? She asked, as she played with the hairs on the back of his neck.
The Chancellor. I forgot. He asked me to come to get his blasted report for the council tonight at the Opera House.
Anakin said in irritation. Oh, Padme said with disappointment.
Forget it. His report can wait until the morning,
Anakin said. Padme sighed and started buttoning his tunic. No, you don't want to upset the council. It should only take an hour to go and get it and deliver it to the council. Besides, that way you can visit Obi-Wan before he ships out again, Padme said. He sighed.
You're right, Anakin said. It's time to tell him about us,
as he helped her up. She put her arms around his neck. Maybe we should tell him together. I can ask him to come here and we could tell him together, Padme replied.
Are you sure, Angel? It's not going to be pleasant.
Anakin said. Marriage is hardly one-sided, my love. He should hear it from both of us. She replied.
And how are you going to get him here?
He asked. She smiled coyly. I'll just tell him I need to speak with him about something concerning you. That ought to perk his interest enough to get him here, Padme replied, as they heard Ahsoka land on the veranda.
Well, Snips can keep you company while I go and get the Chancellor's report. Then we can pick up where we left off,
he said as he kissed her tenderly. I'll hold you to that, she replied.
You better,
he replied as R2 rolled in ahead of his Padawan. Anakin smiled and put a hand on her swelled abdomen.
I can't believe these two finally have names too,
he mentioned. I know, I can't believe we found such perfect names for our babies, Padme replied.
I know, and they match too,
said Anakin. I'm sure Ahsoka will approve too, Padme replied. He kissed her softly.
I'll be back soon, he promised.
He briefly greeted his Padawan before leaving to perform his liaison duties. Ahsoka joined Padme in the kitchen and talked while 3PO heated up her evening meal.
You wanted to see me, Chancellor?
Anakin asked, as he was allowed access to the Chancellor's private balcony.
Oh, yes, Anakin. Please sit.
Palpatine greeted. Reluctantly, the young Jedi did as requested, though he only really wanted to get the report and leave.
I'm sorry it's so late. I hope I did not disturb your evening, Palpatine replied. Of course not, Your Excellency, Anakin lied. Still, I do apologize for my tardiness in getting my report to you today. Please give my regards to the Council as well. I just can never miss this particular showing whenever it's here. It's been over a year since the last showing of this particular opera. It has always been my favourite. How about you? Palpatine asked. I've never been a fan of tragedies, Anakin replied honestly. Ah, the hopeless romantic, Palpatine replied wistfully. I suppose you could say that, Anakin said neutrally, instantly thinking about Padme, as Palpatine handed him the data chip that contained his report. Thank you, Chancellor. Enjoy the rest of your evening, Anakin responded, and he excused himself. Once he was in the atrium, he used the nearest data terminal to transmit the Chancellor's report to the Council with his encryption code. Since it was late, there was no need to deliver it personally, as the Council was dismissed for the day. He sighed. Tomorrow morning he would face the difficult task of telling Obi-Wan about his marriage to Padme. He was both anxious and apprehensive about it. But for now, he would return home to the woman he loved. As he finished uploading the information from the data chip, he suddenly felt like someone was watching him, as the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He looked around and probed the Force, but found nothing.
As quickly as the feeling came, it disappeared again. Wordlessly, Anakin exited the building, heading for his speeder, thinking that his paranoia was getting the better of him. Back inside, in the shadows, a pair of sickly yellow eyes glowed evilly as the person observing the young Jedi as he left. Once Anakin was gone, the shadowy figure disappeared out of sight. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this one. Okay, so the calm before the storm. Oh boy. Anyway, yeah, what can you do? On to the next chapter. You guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.